Hey guys, and welcome to Functional Print Friday. And welcome back to my shop. So in last week's episode, we started working on this rack, holder, whatever you want to call it, for these Klein T-handle wrenches. I got a set of these in Imperial and Metric and really love them, but the holders that they came in are just absolute garbage. So we're making our own, and this is also designed to fit in a specific spot that is actually open in the top of my toolbox. The bottom rectangle part just slots into that pretty nicely. So where we left off was this prototype print, and we did this at really draft quality. This is the layer height on this is almost 0.5 millimeter, and it shows. It's pretty rough, but it did demonstrate that this design will work. We just had some tweaks that we needed to make. And I also asked you guys what things that you would suggest for the next version of this. And you guys left me a ton of awesome comments. So let's go check out those first to get some ideas before we start coming up with a version 2 for this. All right, let's take a look at the comments from last week's video. And I actually looked through these comments earlier in the week before I made the modifications to the design. I'm actually doing this now just in the process of editing this video. So that's why, for example, this says 7 days ago. And there might be some comments in here that came in after I already looked at these earlier in the week and modified the design. But I do want to go through and just touch on a couple of the themes and key comments in here. All right, starting right here at the top with 57 likes, I'm begging you, please learn Fusion 360, Onshape, or even FreeCAD. So I can't speak to FreeCAD. I don't know what the licensing model is on that one. I have checked out FreeCAD in the past and I was not super impressed with it. But Fusion 360 or Onshape, I would love to use either one of these. Unfortunately, because I post these videos to YouTube, it's considered commercial use. So I don't get to use either one of these software packages for free, the same as you guys do. Onshape would be my first choice, and Onshape is $1,500 per year per user. And yeah, again, I know they have a free plan, but it's for personal projects. It's for non-commercial use only, so I can't use it. Autodesk, I actually just noticed, is on sale right now for $510 per year for a single user. I'm assuming it goes back up to whatever the standard amount is after that, which I feel like the last time I looked into this, it was even more than $680. I think it was $800 something. So I don't know, maybe they're starting to catch on that people don't really want to pay that much on a subscription plan to use the software. I don't know. But yeah, that's why you see me still using SketchUp, is because, yeah, I can't use these for free the same as you guys can. All right, let's keep going. Lightning infill. So I really do need to give this a go for draft prints at some point. I look at it and I do the slice and check out the design. And I always feel like there's just not going to be enough support for the top layers and they're going to end up pillowing. And I guess it doesn't really matter for a draft print, but grid print's pretty darn fast as well for draft prints. I think a chamfer instead of the curved funnel might be better for easy insertion of the wrench. Yeah, you're 100% right. And this is one of the design suggestions that I did end up using. Thank you so much for the suggestion. You're absolutely right. I liked the look of the, just the sort of roundover on the top of those bores, but the chamfer is way better for actually aligning the wrenches. See, we got 11 likes for labeling the slots. Yeah, I agree. I did end up labeling the slots. I think you guys are going to be happy with how it came out. It did increase the print time quite a bit for all of the color changes for the labels, but I think it's worth it. It looks, you guys are just gonna have to wait till later in the video, but I think it came out really good. And 2 more comments here suggesting labeling. Yep, agreed. It definitely needed the labels. Yeah, actually this person mentioned labeling it as well. So you kept the grid infill. I print PLA with the settings, sometimes it generates issues. So they're suggesting gyroid or 3D honeycomb. I don't use 3D honeycomb that much, but gyroid is my standard infill. I do not use gyroid for PLA prints that are draft because the grid infill is just so darn fast. Gyroid takes a lot longer, but it is much stronger. And I personally think it is the strongest infill at any percentage. Just the way that it's drawn up through the part, it gives equal strength in every single direction. Completely agree. If you haven't checked out gyroid infill, it should be your go-to infill for any of your final production prints or parts. I think grid's perfectly fine, at least on PLA for draft prints. I have also run into issues with PETG with grid infill. Just with it, it seems to, the nozzle seems to run into it with PETG for some reason, even though it doesn't in PLA. I don't know if maybe PETG, like the pressure advance, just isn't as tuned on PLA, but yeah, I agree. I've also had issues with doing grid infill on PETG. All right, the next suggestion was to add a handle. Several people suggested doing a handle, and it's not something I'd really given that much thought to. I didn't know if it was worth going through the trouble of doing it, and I couldn't think of how to integrate it into the print. But it's a great idea, and I did end up doing a handle, and I machined the handle out of aluminum instead of trying to integrate it into the 3D print, and I think it came out pretty sweet, so stay tuned. Okay, the last one I wanted to call out was, let's see, yeah, this one right here by Lucas. He suggested a weight fillable cavity in this, and I didn't do exactly that, but seeing this comment gave me the idea of what if we just hollowed out the back of the design and essentially made it so that you could use it for storage as well. All right, without further ado, let's actually go look at the updated design. All right, guys, and here is the updated design that I came up with for this. And I'll admit, I've probably gotten a little bit carried away. This started as one of those projects that I figured I could knock out in an hour or two. And the more I got into it, the more I was just enjoying just sort of tweaking it here and there to really just perfect the design. And the comments and suggestions you guys left me were really, really useful in helping shape this. I think my favorite is probably going from the round over to the funnel or the bevel shape for each to top off each one of these bores. I think it's going to make aligning the hex wrenches a lot easier. I also cleaned out the geometry quite a bit, just making things equal all around just to make it visually more appealing. You can see I added some accents to the side. I'd love to tell you that they serve some kind of purpose, but they don't. They're pretty much just decorative. I guess you could make the argument that they potentially strengthen the side a little bit, but yeah, I kind of got a little carried away with those. Also spent quite a bit of time here around the back. I wanted to maximize the space in here for storage and also to lower the center of gravity of this overall. But I didn't want to have to add supports. So I spent quite a bit of time, but I managed to get this shaped in such a fashion that I think it's going to print really cleanly without any supports. The handle, I thought about trying to design this in a fashion that we could 3D print it, and then I thought, you know what, why not make this a machining project as well? I mean, why the heck not, right? We've already, you can see we've already added a tremendous amount of complexity everywhere else. So this is going to be, it's probably a lathe and a mill project. If I hide the base here, you get a better idea of what is going on. The line here is just to show which part of this sits above the box and which part sits below. I can just delete that out. But this section down here will be threaded. So this will slide down into the bore of the base, and then this part will screw in. And if I hide, let's see, if I hide this, I think you can see, yeah, it's a little confusing the way that geometry shows up. There we go. So there'll be a bore through this and then a hole all the way through. And there'll be an M4 hex cap screw that goes into the top that secures into that shaft coming up. So that's why I said this is going to be a lathe and a mill project. I mean, this piece will be made in the lathe, but we'll have to do the bore and these other parts here on the milling machine. So that should be fun to do as well. I did another version of this as well without the lettering. This is going to take quite a while to print with all of the color changes. And unfortunately, I just can't think of another way to orient it that would print without the color changes at so many different layer heights, because it's not like you could print it upside down. I did entertain that. Even with the storage box, I think there would be a way to potentially print it on this face, but these angle away. So can you imagine the amount of supports and just the mess that would be with these funnels? So unfortunately, if you do want to print this with two colors, there's just going to be a lot of filament changes to print this. So if you don't want to do that, I'm going to have the STL for one without the labels on the front as well. I would say be patient and print the one with the labels. It's probably going to be an extra, I don't know, maybe 5 to 8 hours of printing and, you know, maybe 100 or 200 grams of wasted filament, but I think it's going to be worth it for having the high visibility lettering on the front. But if you don't want to do that, or you don't have the ability to do multicolor printing, I will have an STL for one with just a flat front as well. Okay, so the trick to doing the lettering the way that I do it is I export the lettering and the design as 2 separate STLs, but I import them at the same time. And it's important that you have the lettering STL positioned in your modeling software in the correct position to do it this way. So watch what happens. If I import both of these at the same time, it's going to ask me, load these files as a single object with multiple parts? Yes. And if I do it that way, you notice that this comes in and the lettering is already in place. Now it looks a little weird because right now they are the same color. In fact, if I unselect it, you can see it kind of even disappears. But if we go over into objects, you see now I have the lettering is actually a separate STL. So if I click on that and I change that to the color white, you can see not only do we get the purge tower, but now the lettering shows up the way we want. So in that one click, just going over into objects and then clicking the STL that is our lettering and changing the color, we are done. That's it. All right, that is going to take quite a while to print. So let's go ahead and start getting all the labels off of these wrenches so that we're ready to go when that print is done. All right, the labels are all off at this point. All we can do is wait for that print to finish. So I'll bring you guys back. All right, guys, it is done and it came out absolutely gorgeous. I can't find any flaws on it other than my own fingerprints. The lettering came out perfect, even all the way down to the really small font at the bottom. And it is perfectly flush with the surface. It just looks really good. Again, this was printed without any supports at all. I designed everything that it would print without supports. No brim was needed on the bottom. And I'm really happy with how this compartment came out. So I think the next thing to do is let's see how the wrenches fit. I'm already excited about making this handle, but let's try all the wrenches in here first. These are sitting at the correct height now. If you recall, we rose the bottom of the bore for the largest of the small ones. For some reason, the length of these was just a little bit different, and these both sat below the level of the 3 below them. The height of those looks really good now, but our 3/32 is still tight. We had that same problem last time. Oh, you know what? I think the actual wrench is bent. That would explain it. Let me see if I can straighten this guy out. All right, still not perfect, but it is a lot better. There's still a little bit of a bend in one spot. I'll mess with it more later, but it's mostly straight now, and it does go in. It's just a little bit more snug than the other ones. These ones really almost just kind of fall in place. This one, just feel a little bit of friction. It doesn't stop. You can still easily hit the bottom, but yeah, I'll have to go tweak that. All right, let's try it in the toolbox. Yeah, that fits perfectly. Still have room up in the front if I want to add something else up there, but slid all the way to the back. This is exactly where I want it to sit. The front wrench is pretty much flush with the front of my toolbox here. And the angle of these is just right that I can see all of the lettering on the top. And if I stand right in front of it, I can see the lettering on the rack as well. And just playing with it on the workbench right now, I've noticed that I don't even need to look at the funnels. If I just look at the position of the other wrenches, the funnels are big enough that I can just sort of eyeball it down in place and it hits the funnel and drops right in. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at sort of this line here and lining this up with that and then just going down. And it's just consistently, if I do that, it just goes right into the funnel, which is great. Probably not quite as good for the ones at the top. Actually, it works pretty well for the ones at the top. The funnels work really well. That was a great idea, way better than the roundovers. And I think maximizing the funnels to the full width of that flat face there ended up being a really good choice. All right, let's get this back down to the bench and start working on the handle. All right, I've got all my dimensions for the bore here, both the top part and the part with the threads further down. So I'm gonna go find some aluminum bar stock and I'll get you guys behind the lathe and let's get this stuff made. All right, guys, it is done, and I am really happy with how this came out. This was a ton of work to do this. This took almost 4 hours because I treated every dimension as critical because I'm really still just getting started with learning how to properly use the lathe and the milling machine. So even though most of these dimensions did not really matter that much, I still chose to treat them all as critical dimensions. And I pretty much hit everything on size. The only mistake I made was I bored a little bit too deep for the hex cap screw. I intended the top of this M4 hex cap screw to be basically flush with the top of this handle, and I just went a little bit too deep. I'll probably make a spacer for that, sort of like basically like a custom washer to bring that back up to the correct height, because that's going to drive me nuts. But otherwise, this thing came out really, really gorgeous. The threads I left really rough because they're going into plastic anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And the only operation you guys didn't see, the camera battery died, was I left this in the milling machine. And then when I was finished with this piece, I came back and I used the boring head to bore the bore that this shaft slips into to the exact dimension, so that it was a light press fit. I didn't want this to rock back and forth at all. All right, I could talk about this for another 5 minutes, but this is a 3D printing channel, not a machining channel. So let's see how it fits. All right, I think I'm actually going to take all these out so that they're not in the way of trying to get this threaded in. I expect this to be a real snug fit. I did check this this dimension on this in the lathe just to make sure that it does fit, and it did start in. It was quite snug, and that's how I want it. So I've got to just get this down in here until we hit those threads, and then thread it in. I think we might already be at the threads. All right, I got it all the way in. I did measure to make sure that it lines up with my drawing, and I am at the bottom of the threads, and I've got it nice and straight. So let's put the wrenches back in and see how everything looks. Yeah, I think that's still at the right position. It's out of the way of the wrenches, but the real question is it going to be easy to grab when it's in the toolbox? Yeah, that's super easy to grab. And I think if we actually put some wrenches down here in the storage compartment, the balance is going to be a lot better as well. It's not bad like that, but let's put something in the storage compartment. So I have just a few Allen keys that I never really use because you know how it is. You get like, you buy some piece of furniture or something that you have to assemble, they give you the Allen keys and you throw them somewhere because they're not really the Allen keys you ever want to use, but let's put some in the back here. Actually holds quite a bit in there. Yeah, that's a little bit better balanced. I mean, it wasn't bad before, and I don't even have this full. If you wanted to just put weight in here, just to make this guy more stable, you could just put a bunch of nuts and bolts in here, or heavy washers, or anything. But the reality is, even though this thing looks pretty tippy, just because the center of gravity is kind of high, I don't know. It's deceiving. It's not as easy to knock over as I anticipated it being when I initially designed it. So yeah, I'll probably leave some Allen keys in here, but I don't think it's strictly necessary. And if you guys are really interested, maybe I'll do a wider base version. Just take this and just make the base a little wider, but I kind of like the narrow profile. Even though I designed this specifically just to fit in that rectangular open spot in my toolbox, I don't know, it's nice that it doesn't take up that much space on your workbench either. All right, guys, I am super happy with how this came out. Thank you so much to everyone that left me comments in last week's video with design ideas for things to incorporate into this and things to change. I was able to utilize a lot of those to really reach what I think is the absolute best design possible for these Klein T-handle wrenches. And if you want to make one of these for yourself, everything we do on this channel, I give away the STLs absolutely free. So you'll find the STLs for this at my site, fpfdesigns.com, and that will be linked down in the description of this video. Guys, as always, thanks for hanging out in the shop with me for this design and build. It's always really great to have you guys along. And if you got anything out of this video at all, if you enjoyed it, do me a favor, take a second, hit the like button on the video. Really helps out the channel. Also gives YouTube an idea of the type of content that you actually want to watch. And if this is by chance your first time on the channel, this is primarily the type of projects that we do here. It's a lot of stuff out in the shop. I do stuff outside and around the house as well, but it's all functional prints like this. It's either from scratch designs like this one, or fixing or improving something that I've got that I would just like to make better. So if you enjoyed this, check out some of the other videos on the channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. And guys, if you do, I'll see you next Friday.